Okay, I want to talk briefly about compatibility. Now, one of the issues with any operating system, be it Android, iOS, or Windows and so forth, is downwards compatibility. And that's where your application that you've developed for a specific version of your operating system needs to work in a previous version. Now, Microsoft Windows is one example of an operating system where they went to great pains to make sure that, say, an app that was working in Windows XP would work in, say, Windows 2000 and even some of the earlier editions. So in other words, they made sure that the current edition didn't alienate all these old applications that worked on previous versions of Windows. Now, Android is much the same, but the thing is, it's not automatic, but with only a little bit of work, you can really have your cake and eat it too. In other words, you can create an app that takes advantage of the functionality and the great new features in Android Lollipop, but still have those applications work magically in previous editions of Android. Now, there is some work involved in this. It's not 100% automatic, but there's also not a lot of work. So Google produced a ton of support libraries to make sure that older Android devices running older versions can still take advantage of some of these newer features. So you do have to tell Android that you want to support these older devices. In other words, by default, if you just create apps for Android Lollipop, chances are it's not going to work on those older devices. So it's not a huge job, but it is a change. You need to make sure that you are specifically telling Android how to do that. And of course, yes, we will be covering that in the course. So why bother? Well, think of it this way. The vast majority of users take a long time to upgrade their phones to a new version of Android. Some may never upgrade. There's lots of Android devices, for example, that don't enable upgrades or can't be upgraded past the specific version. So if you don't support those users in some way, shape or form, they will not ever get to see your apps. So you could possibly be alienating yourself from a large percentage and probably the majority of Android users if you don't support at least some previous versions. And the way that Google Play works for your users, they won't even see your app unless their device supports your version. So, in other words, if you're only producing an Android Lollipop version, it could be the best game out there or the best application. But if a potential downloader, potential user of your app is running an older version, they won't even see it listed in the Google Play Store. So Google sort of makes sure that they only see a filtered version of what they can download on their devices. So really, to me, it's a no-brainer. You need to be focusing on making sure that you support at least a certain percentage of these previous users on older devices. Yes, I'm putting it out there and saying it's essential for you to do this. With only a little bit more work, you can support and potentially get downloads of your app from a pile of new users. So make sure you do look into this. And as I mentioned, we're going to be using this from this point forward in the course so that the concepts you learn, you can apply to your apps that you're developing yourself, will have these sort of downwards compatibility layers added. Let's talk about a couple. Firstly, Google Libraries. Version 4 library that came out from Google that supported the API level 4 and above. So what that means is that they have provided support. So if you're running a really, really old version of Android, if you use some of the functionality in a current version, and you sort of say that your app is supporting the functionality from the V4 library, it means those really old devices can still run your app. So it doesn't affect the new users. For example, if we look at version 7, the version 7 library, which came out to support API 7 and above, well, that's got card view support. Now, card view is something which we'll be talking about later in the course, and that was only introduced in Android Lollipop. So by using the functionality within the Google library for the V7 library, but the way it works is that the Android Lollipop users get the very latest Android functionality automatically, whereas of course the older version, the version 7 libraries, the older devices, will see an emulated version of Android Lollipop. So it still won't look exactly the same and it won't be as cool, but your app will still run. That's really the concept here, and it's done virtually automatically, certainly to a large degree for you by Google. So it's definitely worth spending a bit of time learning this. And go to developer.android.com/tools/support-library, and you can find a ton of information on Google Libraries. The other cool thing is the app Compat library version 2.1, which of course is API 2.1, Android Lollipop. That has introduced material design for pre-Lollipop devices. Now this is seriously cool. Now App Compat has been around for a long time. Now it originally started out as a backport of the old Android 4 action bar functionality, which originally was targeting gingerbread devices, but it's been updated by Google. So Android Lollipop adds a toolbar, and the App Compat v2.1 allows you to support this toolbar on older devices. So we're going to be using this in our examples moving forward. In actual fact, the Flickr browser app is our first app using material design, and it's going to be using this very library. So check out this link. I'm not going to read it out. It's quite a long one, but that's the announcement when they made in October of this year. And there's more links you can go to find out more information. But we will be going through this, as I said, through the course, and we're going to be using this very library in our code to make sure that pre-Lollipop Android devices can still see the material design on their devices. So in summary, I urge you to think of your users. It really makes a sense to support as many as possible within reason. Now there is a trade-off of time and money to support everyone. So I wouldn't suggest you necessarily go back and try and support everyone right back to API version 1, because you'd have to wonder if someone is still running a device on version 1 when an Android sort of came out in 2009. It's 5-year-old hardware. I mean, they probably can't download and do much anyway. We've targeted API 16 in this course, and that's been my suggestion as the minimum API level to support. But look, there's no reason why you cannot go back further if you wish. It's entirely up to you if you wish to go further back. The further you go back, the more work is involved in sort of supporting and using these other libraries to make sure that things work on those devices. Okay, so check out the Flickr browser app. Part 1 was downloading the data and parsing the JSON data and storing that on our device. Part 2, we've introduced a basic GUI interface, a very basic sort of non-material design approach to show you how it would work typically. But then in part 3, we're adding full material design support to that app, so you can see what it would look like with a proper toolbar and the proper material design working, proper colors and so on. So I really think that real-life examples really solidify your learning. So make sure you type in those examples, because it'll be to your benefit and you'll learn a lot from it.